This is the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast with your host, Kevin Murray.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. On this episode, we've got an awesome guest for you to get to know from Fantasy Points. It's Kyle Menton. Welcome to the show, my man.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Very excited to be here, and it's an honor to be a part of your podcast.
Yeah, let's do it. Obviously, for listeners and viewers that aren't familiar with your work, what is your role over there at Fantasy Points?
Yeah, I'm still relatively new, fresh to the game. Just started back in February of this year. Simple terms, I'm a content creator, kind of an overarching role. Do a little bit of everything article-wise, cover several different areas in fantasy football. I've had some content around Dynasty, Best Ball, Redraft. Hopefully, I get into Guillotine League content next year. Kind of just run my ideas ahead of our lead writer, Ryan Heath. He lets me know if he thinks it's good or not. And then, I go ahead and proceed. And then my big series so far this season has been a weekly trading guide series with Fantasy Points. So that's where I cover our top 50 rest of season players, put some trade outlooks, trade package examples, and kind of focus on one of my favorite parts of fantasy football, which is trading.
Trading is a great aspect of fantasy. It's one of those things that I think it's always important, like from a league perspective, a commissioner's perspective, to do things to help enhance the trade activity in league, because obviously you want people engaged in a fantasy league, and trades definitely help that. It causes some excitement, little some emotions. There could obviously be some controversy sometimes with trades and controversy, but I think that's what makes fantasy fun. So that's awesome. Now from a consumer perspective, what do you love about Fantasy Points? What do you think that it is that people love and enjoy most about Fantasy Points?
I'm going to try to sound non-biased here, but I truly believe that Fantasy Points has the most in-depth and high-quality content in the industry right now. And that's, largely thanks to Ryan Heath and Scott Barrett. I think we have content for every kind of fantasy football enthusiast. And that could be something, very hyper-specific, could be something at the macro level, just looking how the game evolves every year. And on top of that, I think we have the most robust data suite. It gives you access to pretty much any stat imaginable, however specific it may be. For example, would be like if you wanted to know which RBs have the highest, explosive run rate, when seeing between 2 and 3 yards before contact per attempt. So a crazy specific stat. We have that. Fun fact, it's J.K. Dobbins to answer that one. But I just think that's super cool that, we have those tools if you want to find out any piece of information. And then I think, outside of just that very data-driven content, I think our writers do a good job of not getting what I call fantasy football tunnel vision, meaning they're able to analyze things outside of the scope of just fantasy football, and they're great at understanding why players are being used, why they're performing as they are. And I think that comes across in nearly every piece of content. So it's still so funny to me being, in this industry now, and I'm just very honored to have this opportunity. So I'm just happy to be a part of the team.
Yeah, let's talk about your journey in this industry thus far. Finding your way to be a part of that team. What inspired you to get involved in the fantasy sports industry?
I think it's just stems from addiction for the most part. I mean, I love fantasy football. It's probably my favorite hobby out of everything. I started playing about 10 years ago, and I've gotten progressively more and more and more into it, finding ways to get better, get more involved. And it kind of just made sense to do this on the side. And then it evolved continually where, I started posting on Reddit back in, I think, January of 2025. Just very simple posts like, players to keep in mind for next season, predicting breakout candidates for 2025. They had pretty good engagement. I think people liked the idea of discussing these things in the offseason early on. Just kind of kept rolling with that momentum. I created like a versus series where I pit 2 players that I thought might have similar ADPs, took a deep dive at all of their stats and tried to predict, who's going to perform better. And I think maybe like the aha or breakthrough moment was this one post where I pit Drake London against Brian Thomas Jr. And it blew up a little bit on Reddit. And I remember seeing, comments from guys like, Andrew Cooper in the Stack League, kind of giving me my flowers. And then, Jeremy from, the subreddit as a moderator. And eventually Ryan Heath messaged me directly. And I remember waking up that morning and seeing that like DM notification. And I'd been a fan of Ryan's work for a while and still couldn't believe that he'd been reaching out to me and, was interested in maybe me having an opportunity to write content for Fantasy Points. And it's been a great journey so far.
That's awesome. I love hearing stories about how talent is discovered in the fantasy space. So many people out there doing a ton of work in the community, trying to find opportunity, and it takes effort and right place, right time. But obviously, it takes good work to get noticed. So that's awesome to hear that. What's been the most rewarding part of this journey so far for you?
Without a doubt, I'd say that the positive feedback that I would get from followers, or just even an appreciative comment on any post. Someone saying, "Oh, this is quality work," or "This helped me with a matchup this week." I get a lot of messages from my followers saying that my content has been useful to them this season. That's pretty much all I was looking for when I started this, was having the opportunity to help other people win. I just think it's such a cool community, especially on Reddit as an example. And then all that added time researching and creating content has also helped me in my leagues as well. So kind of an added bonus that I'm not going to complain about. But yeah, just the community is phenomenal, and I've enjoyed every second of it.
I love that. Yeah, a lot of people are that way, where they put in the work, whether they're in the industry doing content or not. So they might as well get involved in the space, right? But obviously, it comes from a passion for fantasy sports. You mentioned that you discovered it, a decade ago, and it's been a huge part of your life since then. What's the timeline of that? Like, when did you discover fantasy sports, and then where did it go from there?
I think I was a sophomore in college, so I went to SDSU. I currently live in San Diego. My roommates at the time had added me to their league. I think it was maybe back in 2015 or 2016. Didn't do very well in my first season. I do remember that. I think the only highlight of my season was maybe having Jonathan Stewart at the tail end of his career. A little career resurgence, but just the kind of the idea of having this now added interest into every single football game, following players I might not have ever cared about outside my favorite team, and the addiction, I guess, to wanting to win, beat your friends, the trash talk, just everything about it kind of got me hooked right away. And then as I've gotten older, it's also been a fantastic way to stay in contact with those friends that have otherwise moved to different cities, have a lot going on with their lives now, and that's a great added value with fantasy football.
Yeah, I think that most people that fall deep in love with fantasy, it's that league experience, it's the friends, it's the connections. Obviously, it's the competition and the fun with it. But there's so much value to a fantasy football league. What is it for you? Like, where do you have you have one league that's your main league still, or one league that's the most important league to you?
Yeah, I think this was probably the thing I was most excited to talk to you about. I actually downloaded your Commissioner's Playbook on my Kindle last night, so dove into that a little bit prior to this podcast. And I'm actually the commissioner of my home league.
Nice.
So it's a 14-man PPR league. We have FAB, no kickers, defenses, double flex, 6-point passing touchdowns, and then it's a combination of my San Diego State friends and then my hometown friends. So there used to be 2 separate leagues, and I was like, you know what, why don't we just combine that, make a big league? And I felt you were ESPN's 2016 Commissioner of the Year, and I just felt like it'd be cool to discuss that because I love being a commissioner, and I love this league.
Well, yeah, I mean that's where my passion comes from for sure. Football Guys, we just launched the home league show with Joey Wright and myself. So it's all about that kind of stuff. It's obviously kind of a branch off of the Commissioner's Playbook. So much we can talk about. We'll talk a little bit about here. We can talk about it in the future as well. But I just want people to have fun. Get the most out of the fantasy experience. And so I love leagues. You're describing that are just complex. I also love the fact that you blended 2 leagues together. That's a great message for a lot of people. Is that you might not have 12 people that are all in the same loop, same group, but at the same time you can merge a couple groups together, and I love the fact that it's kind of you're the central focus of that league, where you schoolmates, and then then another group of people that because that's my home league. It's friends from throughout my life, family members, and friends mixed group that's just really bonded for years and years together. That's what I want for for everybody. What are the biggest traditions you have, like the most important traditions you have in your league?
There are so many great things, and it's the tough part about being a commissioner is continually evolving, adding new things, keeping people interested. I mean, like you had mentioned earlier, the main goal is just making the league as fun as possible. It can be difficult at times considering a high stakes league can be pretty stressful, especially ones with punishments. I think one of the things that I pride myself on is our last place punishments every year. The best one that we've ever had that I know I'll never beat is a couple years ago. We all, prior to our draft day, went to Petco Park to watch the Padres play, and they have a beer festival kind of inside the stadium. And we had a blow up sex doll, and we snuck it into the stadium and had our last place league mate have to strap it with his belt to his body and walk around the entire beer fest for 3 hours. And even going into it, we're like, oh, we're going to get caught immediately. Like, there's no way that this is going to fly. And it was just the funniest thing. People coming up to us wanted to take pictures. We ended up making it to our seats, got on the Jumbotron. It was a wild experience.
Unreal.
And we made it to like maybe the fourth or fifth inning before they confiscated it. But the last place punishment is something that we pride ourselves on. Other things that, I try to do during the season to increase engagement is we have a requirement. Lowest score of the week has to do a shotgun video and then explain why their team lost, why they suck, what they're going to do to improve. I do weekly recap videos with matchup previews. I also, to get trade engagement up, I posted weekly trade charts in previous years so people kind of had an idea of this is kind of what a player's worth, kind of give them a little bit of a guideline to trading. And then we have a rivalry week. I pit two guys against each other. They have to place a bet and then fulfill that bet. This year, one of the bets was having to drink breast milk. So there's crazy things like that. And then one of the other things I added was a flexing on them week. So in week 8, everyone has to start a player that's rostered in under 10% of leagues. So kind of adds like a little flair. So there's things that I try to come up with every year, but it has become like a third job for me. But obviously, don't mind that at all.
Yeah, fueled by passion. I mean, you just kind of you hit the nail on the head with all that stuff. I mean, it's got to be fun. Make it fun, make it appropriate for the group that you're in, obviously.
Yeah.
But man, I don't know how you're ever going to top that last place punishment. That is absolutely hilarious. You have to have had a ton of content coming from that. Like, you recorded this stuff, right? People.
We still have pictures that we tossed in a group chat of the guy that got last place. He's never really going to live it down. But, it's like you're almost, when you get last place, you're somewhat immortalized, unfortunately. And that's just the name of the game.
Oh, it's incredible. I love it. And I love what you're doing for engagement too, because those are the kind of the tricks you can do to really keep a league connected and keep it engaged. I love it. Love every aspect of that. So who's the biggest rival you got in fantasy? Who's the one person you can't lose to?
It might sound like a cop-out, but I don't know if I have like a single biggest rival. I think the league sort of views me as the league rival to a certain extent.
Sure.
At the beginning of every season, I always have this mantra: don't trade with Kyle, just avoid it at all costs. And, I think every season I've finished with the most trades. So it's fun to kind of to fight through that, stigma of like, oh, let's not have him succeed in any way. As far as like an individual in the league, I have one of my really close friends. He actually joined the league in 2021. It was his first year playing fantasy football, and he was my roommate at the time. So I kind of, helped him, guide him a little bit during the draft, help him a little bit during the season, mostly hands off, but it was his first time. And he actually ended up beating me in the championship in his first year in the league. And I haven't won since that. So he still kind of lords that over me a little bit. And we actually play each other in the first round of the playoffs this week. So pretty big matchup, and I'm excited to face him once again.
I love it. No, that's awesome. Speaking of fantasy leagues, though, you and I are both involved in some aspect with this stacked league. The stacked league is an industry fantasy league, a charity league. Fighting for $10,000 and some more in charity. $5,000 to go into Fantasy Cares, $5,000 go to the Champions charity of choice. It's been so much fun to witness. What made you want to participate in this stacked league, in this project, and describe your role in this project?
Yeah, I think I was pretty much interested right away when Jeremy had reached out to me with the idea, and I thought it was awesome. I'm surprised that it hadn't been done before, as far as I know. Having the chance for this close-up look at, some of the best fantasy football experts in the industry pitted against each other, just too cool to pass up. And then you add in the money to charity on top of it, and it was a no-brainer. And it's been very competitive, which is phenomenal. I think, it's been a tight race in the middle of the pack for the most of the season. No one was ever really out of it at any point. And as far as my role is, kind of an on-field reporter, it was doing kind of analysis of the draft and then, weekly recaps and previews. So just looking at, some of the decisions that, our experts had made, to get to where they're at. And then, also getting a lot of quotes from them. So, Jeremy and I kind of came up with some questions to ask them each week, things that our followers and any fantasy football gamers could gain, extra insight from. And, it's funny, been playing for 10 years, I think I have all these, tricks up my sleeve, and I've seen it all. And some of the answers that they gave were things that I had not even thought of to do to kind of gain an edge. So I still learned things, which I thought was super cool. So I think just overall, it was massively successful, and there was a lot of value to be gained from our experts.
And it's so much activity. I mean, they were so active on the waiver wire, active in trades. I mean, people are fighting, competing. And like you mentioned, from top to bottom, there's been kind of a battle. It's been a battle to get out of last place. There's been a battle to break through and make the playoffs from that middle pack. And then the top four teams have kind of been the top four teams the entire way, which has been so fun. Obviously, it ended up with an incredible final week.
Mm-hmm.
Last place was determined. You got John Daigle taking it home with, of course, quarterback Jalen Hurts. It just fitting for this last week of the fantasy, regular season. Greg Branos was Coach Speak Index was in last like the whole season. He finally broke past it. We almost had a 4-way tie for last place, so the competition was hot. Justin Boone, David Kitchen just escaped that just slightly, but all these guys and gals competed so intensely this season. It's not surprising that it was that from last to the middle of the pack was so close. Obviously, Sigmund Bloom kind of shocked it. I mean, it's not shocking because he's been right up there the whole season. But he took that first spot right away from Dave Richard, who was running it the whole season, which was pretty amazing. Dave Richard gets the 2 seed because he lost to Andy Behrens for the second time this season. So there's a big rivalry
Every
there.
matchup matters, yeah.
Oh my gosh, every matchup matters. So Andy gets in. He's got the 6th seed. He holds off Andrew Cooper and Jake Seeley. And now here we are. It's playoff time. That leaves us with 2 big matchups for week 1 of the playoffs. You got Andy Behrens in the 6th seed. You got Kendall Valenzuela as the 3rd seed from Fantasy Life. It's a fantastic matchup. Talk to me about that matchup.
Yeah, this is a close one. Kind of when I went through, top down for each team, looking at Kendall's team, I think one of the big factors for her is going to be T. Higgins entering concussion protocol earlier this week, just taking some brutal hits in the last couple of weeks. Kind of surprised that he wasn't taken out of the game in week 14. It seems pretty unlikely that he'll be ready to go in week 15, which, makes for some tough decisions in her lineup. She also has to consider Bo Nix versus Caleb Williams. Bo Nix is going to be facing the Green Bay defense. They've been really good as of recently. Caleb Williams has to face the Cleveland defense. That's formidable in itself. That's going to be a tough decision for her. She has, Javonte Williams and Quinshon Judkins as his RB1, RB2. Puka Nacua had a fantastic week. It was good seeing him get a couple touchdowns with Devontae Adams, hogging the limelight for most of the season. And then she has RJ Harvey in her flex. I think what it's going to come down to is, who she has to slot in for T. Higgins, if he's not ready to go, which is likely going to be Jaden Reed. He had his first game back from a long injury stint last week. He had an okay performance, didn't run a whole lot of routes, but still put up, I think, like 7.3 points. So, I mean, her team is still fairly solid. And then we move over and we take a look at, Andy's team. He kind of has this 3-headed monster. He's got Josh Allen, Bijan Robinson, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think for him to win this matchup, he's going to need those 3 to combine for, nearly 70 points. We look at the rest of his lineup here. Kareem Hunt, decreasing snap share with Pacheco coming back. Stephon Diggs, decreasing route share for whatever reason. Mike Vrabel, he has his ways. Shakir, boomer bust recently. And then Luther Burden's come on pretty hot, but Cleveland defense, once again, that matchup is is going to be scary for Chicago. And then lastly, Hunter Henry has been great the last 2 weeks. It's fairly close. I mean, those three guys that Andy has are just so strong. I want to give him the win in that regard, but I'm leaning towards Kendall's team a little bit here.
Well, I've been leaning, Kendall all the season. She's had a great start to the season.
Mm-hmm.
Great squad for sure. Andy, though, I mean, you mentioned that three-headed monster. It's pretty impressive in take down Dave Richard just to get into the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Momentum has got Andy in a great spot. So we'll see how that one wraps up. But it's gonna be a good one. It's gonna be a good one. And then on the other side, you got Chris Harris, the 4 seed, versus Ben Gretsch at the 5th seed, who's really he had a slower start, some bad luck in the beginning, and he put himself right where he wants to be, I think.
Yeah, with Ben's team, he's made a lot of moves this season, and he's been one of our biggest interactors in terms of giving us great quotes every week. I've really appreciated his involvement, and as someone that owned Ken Scatabo in many leagues and had to pivot, with losing that RB, he's done a great job in doing so. Looking at his team, I mean, he has to be happy that Lamar bounced back last week. Finally looked a little bit like himself after a string of poor performances. Devin Neal has been pretty good the last 2 weeks in an increased role. Jahmyr Gibbs, I mean, there's not a whole lot to say there. He's been incredible over the last 5 weeks. And it's kind of his wide receiver core that I think is going to be, the biggest factor for him. That's Jordan Addison, George Pickens, Xavier Worthy, and Wan'Dale Robinson. Pickens has been phenomenal. I know people have kind of over-propagated the drama after last week's performance, but he's been one of the best wide receivers in the league. He'll be fine against Minnesota, even though they have a pretty good defense. But it's kind of Addison, Worthy, and Wan'Dale. I have some concerns on their boom potential. Bowers has been very touchdown dependent the last 2 weeks. Doesn't have too many lineup decisions, so I feel like he's kind of locked in with what he has here. And then if we flip over to Chris, I think the majority of his matchup is going to fall on Green Bay and how they do against Denver. He has Jordan Love, Josh Jacobs, Christian Watson. Watson's been great lately. He leads the NFL in receiving touchdowns since week 11 with 5. Zay Flowers looked good last week. Devonta Smith, weird situation with AJ Brown getting all of the targets now all of a sudden. We'll see if maybe they kind of give him some love based off how AJ Brown looked last night. And then Terry McLaurin, I'm actually excited to see against New York, the Giants, with Mariota or Jaden Daniels, depending on their health. This one's tough for me. I'm a Green Bay fan, and I'd like to root for the guy with more of the Packers players, but I think Ben actually takes this one.
Yeah, I think Ben's in a great spot right now. Obviously, Chris Harris nailed the McCaffrey pick, this season, but he's going to need a huge effort because, the rest of the matchups are much tougher. Ben Gretsch, I think he's in a great spot to advance, and if he advances, he would face Sigmund Bloom, the winner of the Kendall Valenzuela Andy Barron's matchup will face Dave Richard. When you look at the Sigmund Bloom and the Dave Richard rosters, who's in a better spot right now entering the playoffs?
Gonna try to not be biased. Sigmund Bloom was my pick to win the entire thing, and I think he has that incredibly strong RB core of Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor. However, JT hasn't looked fantastic as of late. He's struggled against some of those top tier defensive fronts. He has a tough playoff schedule. And now we have 44-year-old Phillip Rivers signing, perhaps taking over at quarterback for now. JT should see 25 touches a game, but I mean, I don't know if he's going to have those 3 touchdown performances in the playoffs. Kenneth Walker has been pretty hot and cold recently. And then he has the wide receiver core of Jameson Williams, Chris Godwin, and Alec Pierce. I like what we've seen from Godwin recently. Jameson Williams, him too. I know he's had a couple of the donuts this year, but I think those days are behind him. And then we look at Dave Richards' team. It's the best team in the league. I mean, I think it should be him winning the stack league. I mean, he has Devon Achane, who's my personal pick to finish with the most fantasy points in the playoffs. His schedule is fantastic. He's looked fantastic. James Cook, been pretty matchup proof recently. Amon-Ra St. Brown, if healthy, one of the highest floor receivers in the league. And then he also has Devontae Adams. I think we see him go back to getting those, 3 red zone targets a game going forward. It's such a great team all around. I always love to see an upset, but I really think, this is essentially Dave Richards' league to lose.
Yeah, Dave Richards right there. Matthew Berry did a preview at the beginning of the season, looking at all the rosters. That's how he picked. Dave's been running it the whole way. But yeah, Sigmund is in great shape as well. It's hard for me because I have personal bias towards all these
I'm sure.
individuals. We talk about all these
Yeah.
players, players on these guys' teams. But I love the people and I love the storylines in the league. Massive fan of Kendall Valenzuela. She's wonderful in and outside of fantasy. Andy Barron's all-time legend, most wonderful guy I know. The fact that they're facing each other is incredible. The fact that Andy could win and get a third matchup with Dave Richard, who he's beaten twice. That's what this league needs.
Yeah.
No offense to Kendall. I want Kendall to go all the way. But
we need the drama.
But gosh, if Andy can face Dave one more time, I mean, that's if you want content, that's content. And then you got Sigmund Bloom, football guys, legend, fantasy industry legend. Then he could host Ben Gretsch potentially in this matchup. Ben Gretsch is a Seattle guy. I want Ben Gretsch to go all the way. But I love Sig. I got to have Sig go all the way. So I love the storylines. Again, Chris Harris, wonderful. Andy Barron's, Kendall Valenzuela. All these competitors are near and dear to my heart. I want to see a phenomenal run. So let's bring the storylines. Let's make it fun. If you look at, on paper and ignore everything I just said about my biased feelings toward each one of these managers, who do you think is going to win it? You said Dave has got the team, but is that what you think is going to play out?
It's funny because I feel like in the majority of my leagues, whatever, the top seed is or the favorite heading to the playoffs never actually wins. I feel like it's always some sort of, underdog story, someone, with that fringe, flex player that just has a 3-game streak of their entire life. If I'm going to give the easy answer, I do think Dave has the best team, but does that mean he's going to win? Likely not. I think that's just how fantasy football goes. If I were to pick a team that I think could, upset and make a run outside of the top 2 teams, I think I would have to give it to I'm going to go with Ben Gretsch. I don't know. Something about Gibbs right now and what he's doing. He was a fantasy football playoff MVP last year. I think we could see a lot more of the same. Maybe Addison with this easy schedule that the Vikings have could start putting up some double-digit performances. I love an underdog. I'm going to go ahead and throw my hat in for a dark horse with Ben.
That's awesome because we have not talked about this, but when you mentioned in fantasy, usually the one person you think is going to win doesn't win.
Yeah.
I had the same thought coming in. I'm thinking, okay, if Dave does not win this thing, who's on the outside that people aren't looking at? It's Ben Gretsch. Like it's Ben Gretsch. If Lamar, Brock Bowers, and Gibbs come together and just have a massive run, like he's got the team, he's got the fight. I can see Ben Gretsch sneaking through this whole season, being overlooked or whatnot, but just kind of just fighting through it and pulling it off. So it's gonna be fun no matter what happens. It's gonna be a ton of storylines the next couple of weeks. But it's been fun. Again, $5,000 to Charity League of the Champions Choice, and $5,000 to Fantasy Cares. We're gonna have Scott Fish on next week to talk a little bit more about this as well. But this league showcases the fantasy industry, its appreciation for charity, and just how special the community is and how impactful it can be when it all comes together. So for you, how much has this community of people involved in fantasy meant to you since you've arrived?
It still feels like a pretty surreal experience. I've only been doing this for I think about 9 months now, and I don't know. It's so hard to put it into words, but I think there's just no better feeling than spending hours on content, or maybe it's a spreadsheet or whatever it may be that we put out there to help others do well in their leagues. But anyone just reaching out and saying that they appreciate the work that you do, or that it's helped them, or they just they want to see more of what you have to offer. I don't know. There's been so many positive moments, from followers, or just even a simple comment that I've really appreciated. So it's been amazing so far, and I look forward to evolving and growing as the years go on.
I love it. Let's dive into some rapid fire questions. Kind of close it out. Just get to know you a little bit better.
Sounds good.
What do you enjoy most about what you're doing in the fantasy industry at this time?
I think it's kind of still learning. Obviously, I came in, feeling like, I've done well in fantasy for the last couple of years. I should be able to put content out that could help others. And it's, with, Ryan Heath is kind of my mentor. It's crazy how much, deeper you can dive into stats and just, how smart that these people are. I think that's been awesome to see just how people's minds work within the game. It's been so fun too. Like I love data. I love making spreadsheets. I love researching and stuff like that. So it's kind of just been this combination of a lot of my favorites, and now I get to kind of do it, get paid to do it, and it's so cool.
I love it. Now, as a sports fan, what's the worst moment of all time for you as a sports fan?
I think that's a very easy one. I think I mentioned it earlier, but I am a Green Bay Packer fan. It was by far the 2014 NFC Championship loss
I
to
was
the
gonna say it.
Seahawks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Seahawks fan. I knew you were gonna say that.
In
So
my
let's bring it.
nightmares,
Bring it.
yeah,
I love to
it's
hear these
just,
stories. I love to hear these
yeah.
stories.
I mean, that all I wanted to see, at that time period was a Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Watching that game, it's funny. I was watching with my dad, and he's, kind of one of those viewers that, as the game goes on, he's like, let's not celebrate. Anything could happen. Let's not, get too excited. And the way that Russell Wilson was playing, and just everything all the sequence of events that had to happen for us to lose that game was just mind-boggling, and it still hurts me. It still hurts me to this day.
I feel your pain because that was one of my favorite sports memories of all time because I had a house full of people. It was just it was wild because we did play like trash and the most improbable comeback. But I went to the Super Bowl the next weekend or the next 2 weeks, 2 weekends later.
Yeah.
And so I was there when
What a
my heart was
double-edged
shattered.
sword,
So
yeah.
that was
That's not
payback. I think Green Bay fans wanted me to feel the way I did after after that loss. So it came back around to me. But I feel your pain. I feel your pain because stepping outside, Rodgers Brady Super Bowl. I mean that would have been pretty.
Yeah,
special
just
for
wanted
sure.
one. Yeah.
So okay, flip side. What's your favorite all-time sports moment?
I think the easy answer is, winning Super Bowl 45 in 2011. I mean, that's all you want is just seeing one Super Bowl win in your lifetime. I'm sure you can relate. That feeling is fantastic. I mean, the Aaron Rodgers Hail Mary against Detroit in 2015 was incredible. I still think my favorite, Aaron Rodgers moment was in the playoffs against the Cardinals, where you had the double Hail Mary to Jeff Janis, and then our hearts got ripped out by Larry Fitzgerald in overtime. It just kind of feels like it's a story of Green Bay fandom since the Super Bowl. You have these incredible moments followed up by, just agonizing pain the next. But, it's the beauty of sports, and that's kind of why we're fans.
For sure. Now, what are your favorite hobbies, activities outside of fantasy sports?
I definitely have, a lot. I live in beautiful San Diego, so a lot of things outdoors, playing soccer, tennis, beach volleyball, running, working out, whatever it may be. Definitely kind of a self-proclaimed nerd. I love collecting things. I collect, football cards, obviously, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, and then, behind me I have all my Star Wars Lego sets, traveling, TV shows and movies, and then of course reading. Gotten a lot more into that recently, and fantasy football is still number one, but definitely have a lot of different things that I'm passionate about.
Awesome. Now, what's your favorite TV show?
I still think it's going to be Game of Thrones. I think it's the show that I've enjoyed the most, rewatched the highest number of times. Lost was the first TV show I was ever addicted to, and then I think Breaking Bad's probably the greatest show of all time. Kind of different between my favorite and what I think is the best. Yeah. Also, True Detective season 1, Mr. Robot, a couple others I toss out there, but yeah, love TV shows.
Nice. How about favorite movie all time?
I think the simple guy answer is Interstellar and Dune. They're definitely my two favorite movie theater watching experiences. I remember both of them, going in, not knowing exactly what to expect and just being blown away. They're just phenomenal films.
How about a sports movie?
I think I'm gonna go with maybe a lesser known ones. There's a UFC movie called Warrior with Tom Hardy that I really like. A soccer movie from when I was a kid called Goal: The Dream Begins, and then as kind of a data nerd, Moneyball. Still love that movie with Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill too.
Yeah, that's a great one. How about a favorite food or a meal?
Anything seafood, Mexican seafood specifically. I think those are the restaurants that my girlfriend and I try to go to the most often.
How about a snack, a favorite snack?
Anything from Trader Joe's. I'll get addicted to a different Trader Joe's snack, every other month. And honestly, I have to cut myself off of some of them sometimes.
That's awesome. How about a beverage?
Beverage. I'm going to go with maybe like a cocktail, like any sort of cocktail with mezcal. It could be like a mezcal old fashioned. It could be a mezcalita. And then recently, like lychee drinks. Usually they have like Asian lychee soju drinks. Been liking those for whatever reason recently.
Okay. How about a favorite artist or band or musician?
I like house music a lot. Living in San Diego, there's a lot of like house music festivals here. There's artists like Fred again, who's pretty popular right now. But my girlfriend actually forced me to get into country music recently, which I had always said I would never like. It's kind of funny because I do enjoy it now. And my favorite country artist is Sam Barber.
Okay. How about a favorite vacation you've been on?
That is definitely an easier one. 2 years ago, my girlfriend and I went on a 5-week trip to Europe.
Nice.
So we stopped at, I think it was like 9 places. We went to Madrid, Barcelona, Munich, Prague, Croatia, Greece, and then we ended the trip at my best friend's wedding in central Italy. So probably the best trip that I'll ever go on. Still think about it every day. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean 5 weeks. Yeah, hard to beat that one.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you can continue to strive for that, but that'll be harder to beat. But if you could, what's your number one bucket list travel destination?
Still probably Japan or somewhere in Asia. Hoping to get that on the books maybe in 2027. Always been something I think I've wanted to do to see that culture. So fingers crossed. Hopefully it happens in the next 2 years. But I've already been to some cool places, so I'm very happy for those opportunities already.
Awesome. No, yeah, I think we're targeting Japan 2027 as well. So maybe I'll see you there.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows?
Awesome. No, great answers for sure. Now, as we wrap things up, any more thoughts on the Stacked League?
I hope this is a continued thing, and I love the competitiveness of it. I love seeing what these experts do, and it's funny, like every day, checking my phone, I get another waiver wire notification. Just seeing them grinding, even on Friday and Saturday, is always so funny. I wish all of them the best of the luck in the playoffs. This is a very stressful 3 weeks for everybody. There's going to be a lot of highs, a lot of lows. Hoping for a very dramatic finish here, and I think we might get one. But overall, just very happy to be a part of this league and this opportunity, and I think it's been massively successful in its first year.
I love it. Now, speaking of some of the gratitude you're sharing there, what are you most grateful for at this time?
Just this opportunity. I think just even getting opportunities like the Stack League, being able to do something that you genuinely enjoy, and either getting paid for it or just getting positive feedback is so nice. I don't think everyone has that sort of opportunity to do something that they truly love, and hopefully maybe either make a living off of it or just spend your time pursuing your passion. So every step of the way I've enjoyed thoroughly.
Awesome. Can you name some of the people that have had a big impact on you thus far in the fantasy community?
Yeah, I think the two is obviously Jeremy, who helped start the Stack League. I mean, he's been a supporter of my work, I think, since pretty much day one. With the Reddit posts, he was someone that was in the comments, either giving me praise or just being, grateful that I was putting out content for the community to help them do better in their leagues. And then, of course, Ryan Heath from Fantasy Points, our lead writer, he, kind of discovered me and to a certain degree is my mentor with a lot of my content. And I think he's one of the smartest minds that we have in the industry. And I'm just grateful to kind of learn from him and grow.
Awesome. Can you tell the listeners and viewers where they can find your work?
Yes. So you can find me at fantasypoints.com. I have articles on there. I also have a Twitter account, Kyle M_FF. I'll go ahead and I'll post, trade charts on there during the season, some of my content there as well. Any interesting stats. And then Kion Fantasy Football on Reddit. That's kind of where the majority of my content is. I have a content hub on my page. You can kind of see any of my trade charts, any articles that I've done over there for free. And then hopefully, expanding and in 2026, maybe getting TikTok up and running and putting video content out as well is kind of something on my list as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me, Kyle. I can't wait to see how this league turns out, and best of luck to you moving forward. Look forward to see you next time our paths cross.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate it and honored to be a part of the show.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. Until next time, be sure to follow and subscribe to all of FFU's social media accounts for daily content.